Hello, and thank you for joining us today. We'll be um, starting in a minute. All right. Well, thank you. We'll wait just a minute just to give people a chance to join the webinar. But thank you again for joining us today. Great. Well, welcome to Building Your Technology Universe, understanding the true value of GTFS in building a technology culture. Today's webinar, National Rural Transit Assistance Program, or National RTAP, is partnering with the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, or AASHTO, in coordination with the Federal Transit Administration. Before we begin, Robin, did you want to say a few words?
Thanks everyone for coming and participating in this. This was a really popular session at our conference, and we just thought, wow, we need to give more people access to this information. And I really am excited that you're here. This is just part of the work that's going on at the federal level, both with research and with implementation. And as we're looking at this, please think about ways that you can participate in the future and participate in, excuse me, the research project that's coming up on implementing this type of environment for small and rural systems. And so keep in mind that there are opportunities ahead for working on these things, and we really appreciate your participation. Thanks. Thanks, Al.
Uh, thank you, Robin. That's great. Next slide, Marcy. Before we begin, just a few webinar housekeeping points. The recording and slides will be made available on National RTAP's website within the next day or so. And during the webinar, please use the chat to submit your questions. And if there's a question that came up that is of particular interest, using the thumbs up is great. That lets us know what's a priority for the group. And we'll be saving 15 minutes or so at the end for a panelist discussion and Q&A. And if we don't get to everybody's questions during the webinar, we will post the responses alongside the webinar recording when we post it to National RTAP's website. Next slide. Just a little bit about National RTAP before we begin. We are a technical assistance center funded by the FTA through the Section 5311 program. There are also other TA centers funded by the FTA serving different programs, and you can learn about those on the FTA's website. We provide free training materials and technical assistance to rural and tribal transit providers and state RTAP programs across the country. We have a review board made of state DOTs and rural and tribal agency staff that help guide our work. In addition to our board, our work on the ground with rural and tribal agencies really helps to inform our programming and the resources that we develop. And you can learn more by visiting nationalrtap.org. And I'll go over this quickly because I want to save as much time as possible for our presenters and Q&A. But here's an overview of our resources, ranging from training materials like manuals, e-learning, information outlining best practices, toolkits, and tracking the industry news. Technology tools, that's what we're here today for, to talk about GTFS. We also have other tools ranging from procurement to cost allocation and scheduling and dispatching software for small demand response services. Peer networking, webinar is an example today, but we also offer a lot of other virtual and in-person opportunities to network, from roundtables to forums to our conference that we hold. And we also provide technical assistance. We have a phone number you can on our website. We have online chat, email, and many of the tools that we offer also have one-on-one technical support that you can get for those tools. GTFS Builder, for example, that we're talking about today. Here in our presenters today, my name is Al Benedict. I lead the Technology Tools and the Community Rides Grant Program at National RTAP, joined by Rebecca Unger from AASHTO. She's the Transit Policy and Technical Assistance Program Manager. Marcy leads RTAP's our GTFS technical support. Stephanie Bouchon is the Transit Deputy Director at Ketchikan Gateway Borough. And we're joined by Joe Gallagher. He's the Transportation Data Analyst at the Federal Transit Administration. Next slide, please. Before we begin, I'm going to turn things over to Rebecca. She's going to talk about the role state DOTs can play in all this.
Thank you, Al. I am really looking forward to today's webinar and the great information we're going to hear today. I consistently hear from state DOTs about a lot of interest in continuing to understand what to do with GTFS, how states should be supporting it, how states should be leveraging it. And as we all know, GTFS is a part of NTD reporting requirements. So it has requirements which come under state responsibility. So it's important to understand the minimum federal reporting requirements which FTA has attached to GTFS to make sure that the state DOTs and transit agencies are all starting from the same foundation. That said, state DOT is a data tool. So beyond the reporting requirements, it's important to understand how to maintain and leverage high quality data, because that's how you'll get the most value out of your investment into GTFS. Because GTFS is an investment, and for state DOTs, it can really shine as a regional planning tool when it comes to goals like the complete trip vision, first mile, last mile connectivity, or integrated intermodal hubs. Or more fundamentally, when it just comes to introducing new riders to a system or helping existing riders discover new services. The more robust GTFS data is, the more that this tool can support your public transportation objectives. And as just a couple of use case examples of state DOTs who have been supporting GTFS in order to realize benefits in their system, over the past 5 years, Washington State DOT grew their GTFS initiative into a tool that has now been utilized to inform their statewide frequent transit service study. And it has helped to lay the groundwork for a collaboration with Oregon DOT on service needs across state lines. Meanwhile, Michigan and Vermont are two examples of states who've leveraged GTFS Flex, a demand response extension of GTFS, to support their statewide mobility as a service programs. Michigan DOT aimed to provide a single interface to access transit information across the state and integrate rural agency services with data platforms capturing urban agency services. Similarly, Vermont Agency of Transportation sought to especially enable rural and demand responsive transportation to be discoverable as part of statewide trip planning. So GTFS really can be leveraged to advance statewide long-range planning objectives and service priorities. It can also, as a tool, support cross-division coordination. This can be within your DOT and also across stakeholders. And this is critical when it comes to things like emergency planning and preparedness. And also, we're sort of running into this year, but large-scale events management, things where data is crucial to understand where gaps in services are and to help make sure that everybody across organizations are on the same page and has the same amount of knowledge. So with that, I will once more say I'm looking forward to hearing from our panelists today. AASHTO is always very glad to work with National RTAP to advance information such as this. And Al, I will hand it back to you.
Thank you, Rebecca. That's great. Next slide, Marcy. And before I'm going to turn things over to Marcy in a moment here, but Marcy's going to be talking about this is the agenda for today, giving an overview of GTFS and why. She's going to talk about some of the free tools to generate or evaluate GTFS, the how, if you will, and then just talk about the importance of data quality and how you as an agency can really work toward that data quality. We're going to turn things over to Stephanie at that. She's going to be talking about how she's used GTFS to really build her technology stack in Ketchikan, everything from real time to service alerts, operations, and much more. And then Joe's going to be talking about the FTA, giving an update on the FTA GTFS data collection. And then again, just a reminder, we will be saving some time at the end for questions and discussion. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Marcy.
Thank you, Al. I am thrilled that all of you are here today. For those of you who haven't yet embraced the concept of GTFS, it transforms your paper or web schedule into an easy-to-use digitized database that can be used in a variety of trip planners. It's a series of 12 text files. They're not scary. You're going to understand them much more deeply by the end of today's conversation. And so while this is wonderful and colorful, it might be just as easy or possibly easier for a rider to plan a trip from here to there by being able to use their phone and say, this is where I want to go. Let's say we wanted to visit the UFO Museum, and we've got to start somewhere. We find out that UFO Museum is in Roswell, New Mexico. So at least we know what continent to go to, maybe even the country and state. We've made a lot of progress. If we can find that there is a transit system online available to us, we would literally be looking at that timetable in a slightly sideways version until we print it. We would likely put our spaceship down and go to the cutest bus stop ever in this cockpit of the airport in Roswell, and then find our way to the Shamrock gas station, for which we could then walk to the museum. That's a lot of thinking. Even if we're from another planet and have a lot of other superpowers, we might realize that that's asking a lot of a rider without giving them a GTFS so that they could plan the trip more easily. I'm going to make one more comment. This agency took the time to map out each of the bus stops in their network, including the on-demand popular places people go. And in about 6 weeks, we have 200,000 views, nearly 200,000 views, so that people can just see where the bus stop is. Well, let's take that a step further, build it out in GTFS, and see what we can do with it. For any platform, if it isn't listed here, it exists as an option for people. This is the idea of interoperable data. It's standardized. So any of these tools can be used with your data set, and you don't have to modify it for any of them. And now we'll be in Minot, with North Dakota, and we want to go to the Scandinavian Heritage Museum. It's a nice, easy one trip. Maybe the bus changes name or number, but all of those details I don't have to think about. I don't have to pull out that timetable to figure it out. If you're at Google Maps, you're going to choose directions and then transit. If you're at Apple Maps, you're going to choose the mapping and transit. And these online services are set up for you to make your trip plan on transit. Maybe you're a rider who doesn't happen to speak English. You have a different language that's more familiar to you. You can set your phone up to your home language, and now all of the details are now a little more friendly for you. You don't have to call in and say, do you have a translator who can speak a language that maybe even the dispatcher doesn't know how to understand to help find the right translator? So let's use these tools in the ways that we can to help with Title VI. So here's an example of Vietnamese language available to someone from that country. I hope each of you are beginning to say, wow, I didn't know GTFS could do that, and it's doing it for free as part of a standardized data when it's published, not just stuffed into your NTD report. You can send the trip plan to your phone. Gee, I need to be able to get on that bus at 12:09 p.m. I better start heading in that direction. I need a reminder. What if I wanted to know all the departures from a particular bus stop? I click on a bus stop icon on the map, and there I can see each of the routes, when they're going to depart. If it's a shared stop among different routes and systems, I get to see all of those routes and my partner agencies for that rider from one location and simplify for them the idea of interoperability. Connections between Jefferson Line and Minot will allow me to no longer have to say, well, what time are you getting in? When would I connect? What route do I take? It all becomes seamless and much easier for riders. Now, when we look at our GTFS data that we see in a trip plan when it's broken out, it's a series of different data elements that we have at our website and as operators of the system. What is the bus stop? What is the color? What are the times? What does the route look like? Is it free? So this 150-mile trip is free to riders because each of those agencies put in their fare information, and now the rider doesn't have to say, do I need $2.50 or what do I need to get on this bus? Sometimes knowing that the fare is free is very, very helpful. We're not having to describe or detail these kinds of things. Like make sure you get the $2 pass when you're in this area and the $1 pass when you're here. It becomes much easier in GTFS. Perhaps you won't have to print as many schedules. We're not saying you will never print a schedule, but wouldn't it be nice if everyone has on their phone the timetable and it's kept up to date because you keep your GTFS up to date? We know you're not going to use a billboard, but the concept of marketing, it's you're marketing this information where the rider is looking for it when they're trying to plan a trip. They might see walking, biking, and then didn't know that a transit option was available to them. And this allows for you to meet them where they are in whatever app that they're using. So what tools do we have to generate and evaluate GTFS? Through National RTAP, we offer a series of Excel tools that are downloaded from our website. Just come to our support page for GTFS. And with these tools, you can import a GTFS that you already have, and then you can visualize it in rows and columns rather than a bunch of text files. For GTFS Builder, you are going to need Excel and Google Earth Pro for desktop. You need it resident on your machine. And we suggest, and often it's helpful, to have a My Maps account through a Gmail so that you can view and edit the stops. And we'll show you a little bit more about that. Your timetable, again, we're just trying to help you visualize where does the data come from. It's going to go into each of these tabs of the Excel workbook. And where do they come from? The Routes tab, what a shocker. It's from where you describe the route. The Agency tab, your phone number, your website goes into the Agency tab. Fare information goes into the Fares tab. You're getting a feel for it, right? This isn't a surprise how data gets organized and how you could update it as your information changes. We've prepared a guidebook. It's a little bit intimidating to stare at a 50-page guidebook, but you only may need something on page 12. So just open to that page, learn about calendars or calendar dates, make those updates, close the guidebook, relax and move on, but know that that resource is available to you. For those of you who might be starting out, you're new to GTFS, our checklist at the end of the guidebook allows you to stay on task, know where you are in the process. We know you're often responsible for more than GTFS, and so we're hoping to make that a little easier for you. Once you're diving in, you're looking at this data, and it gets generated quite a bit out of our Excel workbook. You're going to create the timetable in your format, and then we're going to repurpose it into the GTFS format. The stops need a latitude and longitude. We use My Maps or Google Earth to map those stops, or if you already have the stops, you'd look at them, update them, and refresh them in your stops tab of the GTFS Builder workbook. So it's 12 files. If you had to open one or just wanted to look at one data element and you wanted to look at route information, you click on that text file, and it does look a little scary, but it's just the text related to the color and the color of the text for that route. You're not going to be editing it in text files, although one agency I talked to said he likes typing into his notepad. When you prepare your GTFS, you're preparing, or a GTFS is these text files. It's not the folder that has the GTFS files, it's the files. So try to remember that. I'm going to be make as much emphasis as I can on that because people will have a failed state if we can't get to the file. It's a zipped file. I may encourage you to maybe have your initials for the agency, what state you're from, and that it's GTFS. And please don't upload the Excel workbook. That's for you to use, but it is not your GTFS. You will generate it from there. So let's think a little bit about data quality, and I think Joe and Stephanie will emphasize this. When we have a bus stop, and perhaps here on a flat map, we're not really looking at all of the satellite imagery, we might say, oh, okay, I'm sort of standing on, we'll call it the right side of the street. That's fine. I'll know to catch the bus there. When we turn on the satellite imagery, this bus stop is located somewhat on the right side of the street, but it's in the middle of the road. We would like you to work toward opening up and viewing your data, and we have some tools for that, and nudging this pin, not just here, because again, I could get hit if you turn right into this shopping center. Maybe the bus stop is here, or it's at the door. So we want you to take responsibility and look over this data. The map imagery has changed over time, so it might have worked 3 to 5 or 10 years ago in GTFS, just needs a reboot and a refresh. When you map your bus stops, and here's an example where we took that Roswell set of data from this Excel, we used My Maps, and we took each of these points and we put them onto My Map, where we can now, as a community among our organization, share it with different dispatchers or drivers. We know in rural areas, sometimes you serve large service areas and someone knows certain things better. And then you clean up those pins and repurpose them or republish them, I should say, into your stops tab. So it's very important that you confirm the stops are in the right location. As Rebecca said, good quality data is what we want to produce results. Often we notice that holidays get forgotten. The validator won't tell you if you have the right set or even any holidays listed. So you need to take responsibility for this. On the left, we're showing you that we're replacing a weekday service. We're not running that on that particular Martin Luther King Day, but we are going to run our weekend service. So it's very easy for the writer to know whether you're running weekday or weekend, with, again, not having to read the schedule. For example, on this page, we know what days we have holidays, but down at the bottom, there's a footnote that says on Christmas Eve, whatever, the buses will close at 4 o'clock. I don't want to find out that footnote was on there on the day I'm trying to visit my grandma to find out that you're not going to run the service on Christmas Eve after 4 o'clock. Your GTFS will represent a shortened service on the days that you run short service and full service on those other days. If you'd like to view your routes and your data is published at the Mobility Database or at Transitland, you will have a chance to visualize it. These routes have shapes. So that's what happens. You get to see them. If you do not have shapes, the data is often displayed stop to stop, which might confuse a writer. Why are we going through that river or not on the road? Are we sure that this is the way it should operate? So you'll want to work toward shapes, and it is going to be a requirement for rural reporters next year, and it is a reporting requirement for full reporters this year. So not impossible. We have tools and videos on how to make shapes from the data that you have. These are the recent video webinars that we've held, and a few hints here about shapes in terms of data quality. If you just say, Marcy, this is just too much. I cannot begin to use an Excel spreadsheet to look at my stops, my times, and my holidays, which is the primary parts of GTFS. I want to hire someone else. There may be others. Please let us know who else might want to be on this list. We're agnostic. We just want you to have good quality data through a tool that works for you. When you're ready to validate the file, there are two validation tools that we suggest. This one is used by FTA in the NTD evaluation process, and it gives you some basic information about, and Joe will go in a little more deep on that. Mechatran offers a different lens on validation where it looks a bit more at the calendar disconnects, and that might be helpful to you, especially if you want accurate holiday information. A few more hints about validation. We don't want that agency ID blank, and Joe will talk about why we're going to be using agency ID in the reporting for NTD. We don't want any errors. There might be one or two in shapes that you could ignore, but basically, errors are a failed state. You want to avoid those. No expired calendars. You're adding your shapes. You'll look over the warnings, see what you can fix, and publish your holidays as needed. You can then have your file ready to be hosted, and you can host it at your website, or you can host it with National RTAP. Again, a free service. We don't sell anything here except a way for you to have a web link to your file that's not going to change, and I'll let Joe emphasize that in his presentation as well. So you would run that link that you just created in the validator to confirm that the link is really the valid link and you didn't happen to misstep somewhere when you created that file or the link got corrupted. Just make sure that the link is working when you test it. We'll spend a few moments on GTFS Flex. And as Rebecca mentioned, there have been some states that have taken some leadership, and we'll talk a bit about the Chicago area that has GTFS Flex. And when we want to show a boundary for GTFS Flex, we draw a GeoJSON geography element, and that says this is our service area. We'll have to tell GTFS Flex what days and times we are offering that service, how many days ahead you have to call. It's really not a lot of challenging data, but it needs to be in the system. The Chicago area is running also a GTFS Flex, and so this is how you would see as a rider that you would call and book your trip with knowing who to call, which is what GTFS Flex will allow you to do. Transit app, also a leader in helping riders see Flex information. And so this arced line says, we don't quite know which road we're on, but we do know we'll be traveling safely on a road. And between Rochester, Minnesota and Marion, because they also in Minnesota have been leaders on GTFS and allowing riders to find what their options are. Often it's book by making a phone call, similar to what we have today. Flex right now is not being published for free. All the other stuff I showed at the beginning in terms of GTFS scheduled can be published at all those trip planners. And so you would want to reach out to a tool like Transit App or Demand Trans or others in order to publish your Flex services. Through NCAT, one of our partners, we've put together a checklist. And so if, for example, this is hard for you to read, it's a little hard for me to read, that isn't always caught in the validator. So we'd like you to be able to go through your data, look through this checklist, review some of these details. They're visible in the builder if you use that as a tool, and then make some edits, which is turn the text from black to white, and then it would be readable. Our hope here is that you will take responsibility as a partner with all of us in keeping the data accurate, because you can imagine if I have one failed moment in a GTFS experience and I try to plan a trip and that service doesn't run on the Sunday and they just forgot to turn it off for Sunday, how often am I going to try to plan other transit trips if my experience wasn't the best? So we know you can help us with this. And if you need assistance from us, on Thursdays, I offer open office hours. Come to our website, click on this link. No registration is needed, and join us on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Stephanie, you're going to take it from here if you're ready to roll, and I'll run your slides for you.
Awesome. Thank you, Marcy. Sorry about that. My video didn't want to turn back on. So Marcy kind of dove into the what's and the whys of GTFS. I am going to speak a little bit about how Ketchikan and our team here has really taken GTFS, and we like to say to the next level, but we are certainly not special. We've learned a lot from a lot of other of our peers around the country, and so next slide. Perfect. Okay. So just a little bit. Oh, back one. Can you go back one? There. One back. It's going forward. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So just a little bit about Ketchikan, so you guys have some idea of kind of what we're talking about. We run 3 year-round fixed routes. One within city limits. The other one kind of goes both directions. We're essentially a one-road town. Which seems like, why does GTFS really matter? Get on a bus and you'll get there. But we run a downtown shuttle in the summer because for a community of about 14,000, we're expecting, I think, like 1.6 or 1.7 million cruise ship passengers every year, and that's just from the ship, right? So that's not including independent travelers or anyone else that's coming. So our influx, we run, even though we're small, we're on an island, 14,000 people, we have to think bigger than just our local community. Our local community also benefits from all of these things that I'm going to talk about here. So that's a little bit of a map, kind of a blown out version of what that looks like in our downtown core area. We run that April through October, but as you can kind of see, there's a big swing between what we do in the winter versus what we do in the summer. We also, as of the fall of 24, have brought our paratransit operation in-house. So we operate the ADA complimentary paratransit, which is obviously required within 3/4 of a mile of our fixed route, but we also run a borough, under borough authority, we run a senior program for 65 and over that is a commingled system or commingled program with our ADA paratransit. So more butts and seats, right? We're able to serve the community in that way a little bit better. Next slide, please. So our fleet, again, I won't dive into this too long. We have 12 35-foot, we have 12 fixed route buses. They're not all 35 feet, but that's what the image shows. We have 4 that are 29 foot from our older system, right? And then we needed more capacity, so we went to 35s. We can't go any larger. Our roads won't accommodate those. We currently have 3 cutaways and 2 minivans that we operate for accessible service. And with those vehicles, we provided 484,000 rides in fiscal year 25. So moving some people around here. Just a quick note, because we're a really small staff, this is going to look bigger. Everybody in yellow has been added since a lot of these projects that I'm going to show you here in a second. We were a small admin team, director, myself as a deputy director, our operations supervisor, and 1 admin was primarily the team that was kind of implementing a lot of this or keeping it moving. However, and I'll focus on this in a minute, but it is extremely critical that everyone is involved from the get-go. Our leads were involved in demos. Our mechanics have been involved in anything we've done from on the maintenance side, making sure that there's buy-in and that they're involved, immediately from the get-go and then all the way through the process. We are a union shop, and everybody asks, well, how did you get that through the union? We haven't had any questions because our team, we've explained through our through the whole process, our team understands the reasons why and the benefits of it to both them and to the public. Next slide, please. So all of our technology, and we have a lot, at least for a system of our size, are solutions to problems. We don't have technology for technology's sake. Nobody has time for that. But we have found solutions to our problems, and these are just some examples of the identified problems before we started down this path, right? We had GTFS for a while. We actually, before we started on this path, we actually had an AVL system. We had a legacy AVL system that we were having to actually operate two separate GTFS data sets, which is wild. Please don't do that. But we had a data set for our general AVL, and then we had for our public facing AVL, and then we also had a data set, our regular GTFS file, that went to Google. And so any change that we made, anything we had to do had to be done duplicative, right? It just took extra time. So again, some of these things you can read them. We had a poor, kind of cumbersome process for public alerts and service changes. We had no way to explain detours, which again, as a one-road town, you're like, how many detours can you have? But if anything happens, if there's construction or any of that, it can be a pretty significant detour. It's not just one road over, right? And that's similar to most rural communities where it could be a couple miles that you have to detour to get around whatever's happening. So we also had, we were not real time in Google at the time. We needed better ridership data. A lot of our funding comes from being able to support those cruise ship passengers. And so we needed to be able to see where are people coming from? Where are they going to? Are we serving the population that we think that we're serving, right? And then also be able to kind of compare what are our winter, we could see just in numbers, but where are the people going in the winter versus in the summer? Those types of things that we wouldn't be able to get otherwise. And so that was a problem for us. Growing staff, that seasonality for us, we're constantly training, right? We're in training mode at all times, but we're doing a big push every spring. And how can we make that better? How can we be more efficient? How can we make sure that people who may not be familiar with Ketchikan, because we bring in a lot of folks to drive for us, how can we make sure that we're training them in a more consistent and effective manner? So next slide, please. So again, just kind of, you guys, everybody has problems. We still have problems, right? This was kind of pre, and we kind of, you're constantly doing this iterative process. And this, I just stole this from Six Sigma, so thank you, Six Sigma. But we identify the problem, gather and analyze the information, generate potential solutions, right? You're doing demos, you're looking at all this stuff, and then you're moving into evaluating, but we're constantly doing that. We joke internally that we don't marry our vendors, we date them. We have a very strong and loving relationship with them. However, if our problems change or if the solution no longer fits our problem, we are always kind of looking for what the right set is for us. We learned early on that although there's a lot of vendors that that will say that they can do everything, focus on what they do really well, because we're one agency, so don't take my word for it, but we have not yet found somebody that can do everything. And so we've really focused on getting to this solution. So this is how we tie this back to GTFS, right? You're learning all this thing about Ketchikan, why. This is how we tie it back to GTFS. So everything I just talked about and all of our solutions are built on our static GTFS base. So our infotainment is tied into static GTFS, right? Where does the auto enunciation need to happen? Those kinds of things. Our dispatch is tied in directly to our static GTFS. So we provide GTFS anytime anything changes. The service area will change, and we can then make sure that we're serving the right people at the right times, right? Our automatic passenger counters are critical. The static GTFS then feeds into our AVL, and we're able to provide real time in Google and on Transit app is what we use. And you'll see in the next slide all of our vendors. Again, this is not a sales pitch for them, but it'll hopefully help to explain kind of how many vendors we're working with. The real time passenger info, so the detours, like I said, so in our community, we've experienced 2 landslides in the last year and a half. And both of those were very impactful on our service, as I'm sure you can imagine, right? It changed our routes significantly. One of them actually cut our community in half, so there was a boat connection that was in there. And so this just kind of shows kind of where that static GTFS kind of goes all the way through. It even feeds into some of how we do our facilities management, our fleet management. It's just really, really important. So next slide, please. So here's the kind of our current tech stack. Trillium, a Optibus company, so we're working with them still through their changeover process. Spare actually does our dispatch and rider app. We're able to, they are fully capable of publishing our flex, but we're not there yet, right? So we haven't quite got there as a team after just bringing this in-house. Spare is fairly new to us, but it's pretty exciting that we have that capability. The infotainment, the auto enunciation, the destination signs, all of those things are Luminator, and you guys can see the rest of it. Next slide, please. So here's some examples of just kind of the GTFS and like how we've used it. So like I said, we've used it for training. So we can Swiftly is our current vendor. We're able to draw that detour on the map. It goes out immediately to the onboard tablets so that our drivers can see that. They are reminded of where their turns are, right? It's little things, but they make a huge difference in communication. Sometimes our dispatcher's still on the phone while they're making the detour. Before they can get to the radio, the driver already has that information, right? So it's getting things out there quicker than what we could do just with, what we were doing before, the kind of archaic system of just radios. You can see on the map, you can see all the I'm like pointing at my screen. You can see the X's, like where the stops that are closed. All of these things then feed into Transit app, which is our public-facing kind of what we push everyone to. And Transit app does show the detours. It shows all of the information that we're putting out to our drivers. It shows to the public in real time as well. And so that GTFS base, then we're able to continue to stack things on top of it and make things better for our team and for the public overall. The GTFS file info, I just thought that was kind of interesting. This came out of our GTFS kind of validator. The two agencies are actually us, and we have an airport ferry. So we are where the bridge to everywhere was supposed to go. They called it bridge to nowhere. But our airport, as you can see in this image, is actually on a separate island. So there's a ferry. So the other agency that we put in here and that we make sure is in Google is that airport ferry. So 2,700 stop times, 154 stops, 74 trips, 10 different shape files for start of line, end of line, those kinds of things. So just an idea of kind of what we're working with. Next slide, please. So that was the fixed route side. Now on the demand response side, the GTFS is still just as important, right? This bubble that you can see on the right-hand side is based 100% based on our GTFS. So they were able to just take our shape files, and they're able to just blow out that 3/4 of a mile. And now I have my service area for demand response. The other thing that's really cool, and you'll see, and I don't know if Marcy, if you can point down here in the red, is because they have now this is static information, but because they have our GTFS, they can actually show us if fixed route would be faster or slower, what the equivalent trip would look like or on fixed route. This, again, for ADA paratransit, maybe important, maybe not, right? Depending on how you operate. But it's really important for our senior program, because our senior program, there are a lot of times where it's nice to give them a ride if we can, but if we can't fit them in or it's not the right times, we can actually share with them, hey, actually fixed route would be about 10 minutes faster. Is that better for you? It's better customer service, it's better communication, and it helps us to train our booking agents and our dispatchers and our folks that are answering the phones a little bit better. So next slide, please. So just this again, kind of back to technology, but just kind of our overall technology look right now for Ketchikan, GTFS and not. You can see what we're working with here with between fleet and facilities management and our electronic DVIRs. Some of these don't tie into the GTFS, but I think that all of the things that we've learned through adding these, adding learning GTFS, making sure it's correct, making sure it's accurate. We're constantly updating that. I think, next slide. There we go. Okay, so lessons learned before I dive into that. So managing only one data set has been, right, night and day. It seems like a no-brainer, I'm sure, to everyone else on the call, but that was something that was a bit of a hurdle for us to get over. Vendors use GTFS in a little bit different ways. So you see all those vendors we have, they don't all read the text file exactly the same, and they should, but because of the way they display things, sometimes it's a little different. So just be careful with that, I guess, is my, my 2 cents here, and my from experience. And it can be as simple as colors, right? What shows up on Transit App may not show up elsewhere, in some other place that you're gonna be publishing this data. So just when you're doing it, make sure you're testing things correctly. Make sure you're really focused on that. A little tiny tweak here and there may actually affect something else that you don't even realize it's being tied to. Maybe a short name, right? Is the short name going to now be shown on your destination signs, even though you really only wanted to change it for this other vendor? So just be careful with that. But it's really cool to have one data set, and you could be able to build on all of this stuff, right? Quality and accurate GTFS is a constant thing. And I mean, when I say constant, I am probably fixing things weekly. Satellites change, images change. There's just different things. Little tweaks. By incorporating our writing, or our writers, right? So they're letting us know if something looks weird. Just our normal vocal writers, but our drivers are our eyes and ears, right? Like our drivers know, because we have the onboard app. They're able to see things. They're able to question things. It's just engage your team. I can't stress that enough. Like they are really what make this entire program work. Stop locations, like I said, need updating constantly. Marcy shared that, her image there. We're doing that regularly. And then real-time GTFS. Again, everybody wants to get to real-time. It's amazing, but it's only possible with great static GTFS. All of the reports that we get out of real-time, which are so impactful for us as far as on-time performance and driver performance and all of those things, only work if our static GTFS and our base is good and stays good, right? Like we can't just ignore it and now we have real time. Like that static GTFS really just needs to be. You got to think of it as your foundation, and there's a lot of fun things that can happen from there. So, next slide. So yeah, final thoughts. GTFS is just way more than an NTD requirement. When the NTD requirement came out, we were like, okay, whatever, because we already had it. It's not a big deal. It's just throw your link in there, right? It makes it nice when there's finally a requirement that for us felt non-burdensome. Quality data is quality information. At the end of the day, we're in this business to move people, and people can only be moved if they know where we're at and where we're going. And then start small and build from there. We have a lot of things, but that didn't happen overnight. This has been a really long iterative process. And again, the very base of all of these things is really that static GTFS, making sure it's good, making sure you're involving everybody you need to, and then just continue from there. So otherwise, have fun. That's it.
Thank you, Stephanie. That's great. And just Joe's gonna talk about the FTA data collection, and I'm gonna ask Stephanie to take a look at the Q&A because there's a few questions specific to her, and what we don't get to, we'll answer during the Q&A or post to our website alongside the recording if we don't get to all the questions. Thank you. With that, Joe.
Cool. Yeah. Hey, everyone. My name is Joe Gallagher, and I'm on the National Transit Database team here at the FTA. Up top, I want to thank the RTAP team for having me today. I'm going to cover some highlights of this last year of GTFS reporting to the NTD, and then cover some data quality and data completeness issues that I've seen. Addressing those issues could really help you and the public get more out of your GTFS feed. Not just us at FTA, just building on building on what Marcy and Stephanie have already said. Next slide, please. Just the obligatory disclaimer. I'm talking about what I see here as kind of the lead person on the GTFS data collection here. But as always, refer to statute. Everything's documented there on the NTD website. And then reach out if you have any difficulties either with your NTD reporting or using our NTD data. You can get in touch with us on the website or through that email address there. Thank you. Next slide, please. I love the title of this webinar. It really helped me frame what rural transit agencies have accomplished in the last 2 years. By building a GTFS feed and digitizing your schedules, ensuring that all that information can be represented on a map, rural transit agencies have taken a big step towards building a technology universe at their agencies. Rural agencies, state DOTs, and national RTAP have done an incredible amount of work in the last year to close this GTFS data availability gap. We granted waivers for nearly 30% of rural agencies in the first year of this data collection. Last year it was 3%. When agencies did have a GTFS, and then in many cases it wasn't web hosted. Now nearly every rural agency's data is available at a permalink. And the scale of the service that we see is amazing. 70,000 stops are represented in our GTFS feeds across rural America. I've been categorized here by organization type, representing the diversity of ways that transit service is delivered nationwide in rural areas. Next slide, please. And make sure you click through to show the highlight text. One more click. Yes, awesome. So like I said, I want to emphasize how instrumental National RTAP has been in this effort. The GTFS builder that Marcy showcased in her slides has helped untold hundreds of agencies build a GTFS feed, and National RTAP as well is providing web hosting for over 50% of all rural feeds and 20% of feeds nationwide, including urban feeds. So thank you again, National RTAP, for that. Next slide, please. All this work that y'all are doing at agencies and that RTAP is doing with technical support is giving us a more complete picture of transit service in rural America. In my office, I keep this old atlas that RTAP helped FTA produce in the mid-90s. And the level of detail we have now in terms of transit service coverage data is amazing. So I just wanted to show these kind of side by side. I think it's kind of funny. We've gone, from a really high level paper map that goes region by region to a lot of interactive maps and capability for more to be built on top of that. Next slide, please. Like I said, this data collection effort has been super successful, but gaps in the data remain, and they will affect how your feed can be used by your customers. Way up top, Rebecca mentioned, there's kind of our NTD minimum requirements. There is a lot of overlap with requirements that like a trip planner will need you to meet. So we want your data to be useful to your customers. So we want you to meet the minimum NTD requirements, and we hope that you will go above and beyond so that your data can be, available to the public on various different trip planning applications. This data is not just for FTA's benefits. It could benefit your current riders, future riders, planners at your agencies and at state DOTs, many, many more use cases. When it comes to publishing your data on a trip planning application, the number one red flag for data quality teams at those applications is expired services. Make sure that the services that are represented in your GTFS feed are current. This is a digital version of a paper schedule. You would not want your paper schedules to have prior years or dates on them. As of December, when I last ran the numbers on our rural GTFS feeds, 28% of rural feeds had some kind of expired calendar warning. This is valuable information, not just for us here and for the apps, but for customers who might be wondering if the schedule they're seeing on their phone is up to date. So help give your riders that assurance. Bring your calendar dates or calendar.txt files up to date. And maybe your service never changes, and that's great. just make sure that that longevity of that schedule is reflected somewhere in the data in your GTFS. Check those date fields that exist across those calendar files. We have our minimum data requirements because we want you to be able to meet this reporting requirement with minimal burden. However, that minimum, might not cover all the possible use cases of this data. Next slide, please. All right. Yeah, one more, please. Okay, cool, great. In terms of our requirements, what we're looking for, number one thing is, does the link that you submitted work? And does the link that you submitted directly generate a zip, like a zip file download? Like I click that link, download automatically starts. We are trying to automate the validation and analysis of this data as much as possible. So if you are able to do that, that is a huge help to us. And it's also one of those pieces where the NTD requirement also intersects with value add for your agency. If your feed can be easily accessed by FTA through a direct link, it can be easily accessed by anyone or any tool helping people use your agency's public transit services. And keep an eye on your links throughout the year. We understand sometimes things change. Maybe there was even some kind of cyber attack and you had to rebuild all your website assets from scratch. If that happens or your link changes for any other normal reason, please consider updating your P50 form with that updated link, even if it's outside your annual reporting cycle. We will see that update in our database right away, and we'll publish the update in our new GTFS web links database file so that other downstream users can find your feed. We love your schedules page, and we love interactive maps that you provide your riders on your websites. However, we also love direct links to the feed itself. So give us that URL that ends in a .zip or another extension similar to that. If you're sending us directly just to your schedules page, that's we're still one click away or so from getting that GTFS feed that we need. And the final issue we see a lot is what I call like extra fluff wrapped around your URL. Outlook or another email application might add this fluff to your URL so that it passes different email filters. It's really tough for anyone, not just us, to understand what we're looking at here, and it can cause issues with the mobility data validator. And that's what we use to check data quality for journey planning apps. So if your link looks, something like this, please work with IT support or just figure out how you can kind of properly copy and paste that link into your P50 form so that it doesn't have all that fluff on it. All right, next slide, please. Just to hammer again the service dates aspects of your GTFS feed, this is the data that really lets FTA and the public know that the service in your feed is up to date. Imagine if you're publishing paper schedules with the year 2024 on them. Riders wouldn't know that they could trust the information within. So when preparing your annual report and you're preparing your P50 submission, ensure your feed service window includes service through your NTD report year end. You can do this by running your feed through the mobility data validator that Marcy discussed up top, or open up that .txt file in your GTFS zip and just check, does that look right? Am I seeing 2026 in there? Okay, yeah, I'm seeing 2026. Looking like through February 2026, good deal. All right, cool. But yeah, if you run that through the mobility data validator, it'll provide you with a service window value, and you can say, okay, great, yeah, my data is looking good through, it's looking up to date. So, yeah, we can take it to the next slide, please. Cool. New requirement this year is that we are asking you to use the agency ID field of your GTFS feed and share that agency ID with us on the P50 form. I've got a screenshot here of a P50 form example. This is what you see in the entity reporting system. A lot of agencies are sharing feeds with another transit service. We love this. We support this. However, it helps us a lot at FTA to be able to parse out which part of the feed belongs to which agency. So in this example, we've got a fictional agency, My Transit. They've got a GTFS feed that has two agency ID values. My Transit is doing their NTD annual report. They would put one as their agency ID on the P50 form. Other Rapid, the other agency that they're sharing their feed with, would put two in that agency ID field when they fill out the P50. Yeah, again, this is helping us understand which feed belongs to which. We understand many times these assets are shared. We're great with that. We just want to be able to better map our data to your service. Next slide, please. Just to kind of show further in practice, there's one more click here to Marcy. Agency ID helps us relate the data in your GTFS feed to other data we receive at NTD. This is an example here from the National Transit Map showing why this is going to be useful for us. All these little dots on the map come from the same GTFS feed, but they represent service operated by 3 different transit agencies. This is one feed that covers 3 different transit service areas across the eastern shore of Maryland. Really big geographically dispersed area. So we want to understand this service better, and letting us know that agency ID piece helps a lot. Next slide, please. Cool. Shapes.txt. Beginning next year for rural reporters, we are requiring that you start producing the shapes.txt file as well. This is something that Marcy's tool can help you with, which is really, really awesome. Marcy's been way ahead of the game on this. Again, this is going to be really useful to FTA, but also has huge value add for you guys as the transit agencies. Your service will be more accurately represented on trip planning applications. And if you're developing something like a new route or a long-range transportation plan, having these shapes drawn will facilitate network analyses and things like that by accurately illustrating the paths that your vehicles take through your service area. Now, these are 2 neighboring communities in North Carolina. We've got the feed on the left that does not have shapes.txt, and the feed on the right does. I got a couple more clicks here, Marcy, that says, and one more here. The good news here is that 20% of rural agencies are already producing shapes.txt. So that's awesome. Looking forward to that number grow next year. And again, having a more detailed understanding of all the great service that you guys run. All right, next slide, please. Just a word of caution or something when you are producing shapes.txt. Maybe you're inspecting the data on a map. Maybe you've submitted the data and then data winds up on the National Transit Map. And you notice that your transit network has suddenly grown an arm, it's crossed state lines, or it's entered the ocean. These are really, really common errors that we see a lot. I used to teach geographic information systems class. This is a very common error that you see in any spatial data set produced by anyone, anywhere. It's a very simple problem. Here you reverse latitude and longitude, for example. Suddenly your service terminates in the ocean. Maybe you're working in Excel or another tool. There was a rounding issue, something rolled up to 1 or like another whole number. These are things like that you should be looking out for at various stages of production, or maybe a contractor produced the feed for you. When you finally look at a map, watch out for these kinds of errors. They're very, very common, and they are going to make your service very, very difficult to interpret and to represent on a map. So on the left here, we got an erroneous latitude value. Somebody put a whole number 1 here, maybe rounded up in a spreadsheet program or something like that. Here on the right, they've duplicated the same latitude and longitude across both columns. Cool. And just wanted to highlight some tools here that you can use to inspect your GTFS shapes and stops. Many folks will already have these. You don't need ArcGIS. You don't need to be a GIS expert to look at this spatial data. Excel has a 3D map feature. This may depend on your license, but you can search online for how to look at your GTFS on that 3D map feature. It's pretty cool. It's really easy. Google Sheets and My Maps, as Marcy highlighted up top. And then QGIS is basically a free open source GIS tool. There's a lot of plugins for working with GTFS and QGIS. Large community of users there who can answer any of your questions about those. So lob those into a search engine tool. Find out more if you're thinking, hey, I made this, I just don't know how to look at it, and make sure that it's looking good for the NTD team. Cool. Next slide, please. In addition to GTFS, agencies, y'all have started helping us understand demand response service a lot better with our B15 form. That collects service area data for your demand response modes. We've now started analyzing that data, and we've developed a map that shows all the places that you reported as serving with demand response service via that form. You can interact with a map of place and county level data and see which services operate in that place or county with this map. We got a QR code here, Marcy, if you click through. One more click for that QR code. So check it out. I also have a link at the end of these slides, and we can share it in the chat too, maybe. Next slide here. And then, yeah, so that map, that demand response services is one of the new resources I'm so excited to have at FTA. We can show exactly where rural transit service is and just how extensive and connected rural America is. Actually, I'll sideline here real quick. We had like a brown bag lunch today, all staff. FTA folks here at FTA don't understand how much service, how much trips are generated in rural areas. A lot of folks here underestimate how much transit service are in rural areas in America, but they won't be doing that for long because we're publishing a lot of great data now that you guys have shared with us, showing the extent of transit in rural America, helping us tell a more complete story of transit in rural America here at FTA. We're doing that on the FTA Census Map, which is a tool that we build for the public and for NTD reporters. Take a look at how your GTFS feed relates to different FTA geographies like urbanized areas and census places. The Demand Response Service Explorer, which I just shared and described on the previous slide, and then the National Transit Map and the National Transit Atlas Digest. This is where your feeds are ultimately ending up and being published at the DOT, helping us kind of complete that map of transportation of all modes across America. So thanks a lot again. That is going to be it for me. My email address is here. Looking forward to maybe answering any questions that folks have in the chat today, or get in touch with me via email. Always interested to talk to NTD reporters. Anyone who has issues with GTFS or anything, feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Joe and Marcy and Stephanie and Rebecca. That was great. We have some questions. I guess we'll take a few questions. This ends a quarter past the hour, so we have a little time here. Panelists want to turn on their cameras. There's a question that there's two questions that kind of went side by side, and for Stephanie, looks like Ketchikan has quite the technology stack and list of vendors. How have you been able to keep them on the same page in terms of single GTFS truth, and along those same lines, working with multiple vendors? How do you manage that process?
So I think having a single person that manages a GTFS is first and foremost probably the easiest part, and being involved in the conversations. It can be a challenge, I'm not going to lie. Our APC vendor needed things to work one way versus the way AVL and our on-time performance did. And so we actually had a meeting between all of us to try and figure out how to make that work. Because the route wasn't changing, but how we displayed it in GTFS needed to change so that the end of line, start of line could be correct, right? And that we were able to count all the way through. There was just some little things. And so I don't know that I have any wisdom for you necessarily, other than we've been successful at times having the vendors actually get together with us, recognizing that we are a small agency. I don't have hours and hours and hours just to spend on this one problem, and it's our data at the end of the day. So we need it to work on both ends, and it's successful for them if it works. So I don't know if that helps.
That's great. Well, thank you. And there's another question too on real-time data, and how often, in your experiences, does that get pulled in versus GTFS data typically?
So for me, I mean, our real time is I don't know I should know this off the top of my head. I do not know this. How often it's constant, right? And it depends on which publicly facing app you're looking at. Google, I think, is a little bit lagged. Google isn't as quick, I should say, in updating. It's pretty close, but it's probably a few seconds slower. Also, it depends on the vendor you're working with. So one of the things that we use Samsara for, we use them obviously for dash cams and coaching and safety and all of those things and diagnostics, and they're amazing. But the biggest piece of this is that we also use them as an additional GPS location for our real time. And so our vendor uses our onboard tablet, which has a cell signal. It uses our APC. I mean, it's using multiple GPS signals, including, and TransitApp also uses other people, right? So if somebody's on the bus using Go, they're using their cell signal. And so I know that they're pretty fast and can be very, very accurate based on using multiple sources of GPS. But I think it really depends on who you're using and where you're at, because we do have some zones that are going to be a little bit laggy because the cell phone service just isn't as good.
Yeah, that's great. And somebody did post, this is where we're agnostic to any one company, but somebody did post that TransitApp, for example, requests every 10 seconds, and compared to GTFS static, or GTFS, which is more of a static feed, 4 to 6 times per day. And I guess maybe just more generally, we're going to end here in a couple minutes, but if there's any final words from anyone on how to get started and some of the initial steps that an agency should really take that wants to build their GTFS and the quality data, and then from there how leveraging that forward.
I'll speak up. Look at the data. If you're published at a Google Maps or TransitApp or any of the trip planners, zoom in there. Start planning trips. Plan a trip on a holiday that you think you should not have service and make sure you do not have service. Staring at those bus stops, as Stephanie said, it can be a constant once a week, once a month, but use the data that you have and really take it to heart that something might have changed. You're a dynamic organization. Things are always changing. Your operators should have a feedback loop to the person in charge of GTFS and say, gee, we just can't stop there anymore. They've, put up some barricade. It's not easy for riders to get the wheelchair in there, and we want to move that back by X. Now the rider knows where to stand. So, and calendars are not that hard to keep up to date, but it would really be annoying to be standing on the platform waiting for a bus when you're not going to run that service. So, anyone else want to join in? Staring at the data, you'll be able to have some big wins once you start looking.
I think
this
my last
go ahead.
thing, I was just going to say, don't be afraid of it. Just not only is it a requirement, right? So you're going to have to do it anyways, but try and have some fun with it and have some, like I said, include everybody in it. It really is impactful to your agency, and it's not just this boring map. And I know Joe's really into maps, but they're cool, but it really is impactful for your community. So I guess that's my only thought, is just don't be afraid of it. Have some fun with it and look at all the things that it can do beyond just trip planning, right? There's so many more things.
That's great. And I did just post, actually, there's a QR code. We love your feedback, and we report this back to FTA. What did you think of the webinar? Give us your thoughts, and we really take that information, and it helps to shape the work that we do here. I'd like to thank our panelists, Rebecca and Stephanie and Joe and Marcy, Robin, who's here, for just a really informative webinar. And we're excited to see where GTFS, how it keeps building and really helping support rural and tribal agencies, not with just fixed route, but also demand response services that we're seeing with GTFS Flex. Well, with that, well, thank you so much. We will end the webinar, and there's our contact information too. And we will be posting, again, just a reminder, we'll be posting the slides and the recording to National RTAP's website within the next day or so. And so we will share that information. Any final words, Robin, or anyone?
Oh, well, I just want anybody who's been really enjoying this webinar to think, what is the next thing that we should do? And what other information can we bring you that can help you move your transportation system and your transit system forward, your program forward? Because really, that's what this is all about. And the GTFS really helps people get the information they need to use your transportation when and where they are. And it makes a huge difference. And anything we can do to help you move that forward and to build your tech system, your tech environment, so that we can all be maximizing what we have and what we're giving to our community, and they have maximized access to it. Just totally great. Thanks, everyone. These are definitely partners, and you are partners too. So let us know what you need, and then we can work on it. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. And we will tune in for the next virtual workshop and webinar. Bye now.